Hello everyone, I'm Caitlin Teeter, and on today's Teeter Tales, I'm going to be doing a review of Wingfeather Tales, a short story collection written by multiple writers and edited by Andrew Peterson. Like the Wingfeather saga, this middle grade fantasy is set in the world of Erwiar. I won't be giving spoilers for any of the individual stories, but as I talk about each of the stories, I might get into some spoilers for the main series. Let's go ahead and start. The book contains 7 stories, each by a different writer or artist, with the exception being Andrew Peterson writing the dialogue in the comic. The stories all take place at various times throughout the history of Erwiar, some being generations before the main events of the series, others taking place during the Wingfeather saga, and a few taking place shortly after the main saga. The stories serve as a way to dive back into the world of Erwiar from different perspectives, and largely do not tie into the main series at all. The writing of the book varies with each story, since they're each by different authors. Some are delightfully funny, others poignantly philosophical, and still others pretty average. Peterson's story, The Prince of Yorsha Doon, is well written as you would expect from his writing, but didn't captivate my attention like his main series. His writing in this story seems pretty standard, and it's enjoyable, but nothing that stands out among the other stories. Jennifer Trafton's The Wooing of Sophelia Stupe was my absolute favorite in this collection, and I really love the story, largely due to her writing. Her writing is clever and absurd, and managed to make me laugh out loud many times as I was listening to this audiobook. I enjoyed her story so much that I actually decided to check out some of her other writing, such as Henry and the Chalk Dragon or The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic, and I've realized I just really enjoyed Trafton's funny writing style. Willow Worlds by N.D. Wilson was the only story I actually disliked in this collection, but I'll get into that more in the world building section. His writing is actually well done, however, it just clashes with the tone of the other stories because it almost feels like more of a YA writing style rather than middle grade, fun, whimsical fantasy. Shadowblade and the Florid Sword is the only comic in this collection, so I'll be talking more about the art style rather than the writing. J. Myers uses black rather than white as the background color, and so that creates some really nice, sharp, contrasting images and makes the comic very quick and dynamic to read. From the Deeps of the Dragon King by A.S. Peterson manages to capture the humor of the original Wingfeather Saga series in a roguish pirate tone that mirrors how Poto speaks in the main series. His story was very entertaining and unique with its style, though his humorous tone did clash with the seriousness of the tale he was telling. Jonathan Rogers' The Ballad of Lanric and Rube is an amusing rhyming tale told like it is a long song or ballad. It's actually very reminiscent of if you had a Dr. Seuss story set in the world of Erwiar. It's also a fun break from all the previous narratives before jumping into the big long story at the end of this book. Finally, Douglas Kaine McKelvey's The Places Beyond the Maps might take readers by surprise. It is not a short story, but is actually more the length of a short novel, and it has a very serious tone with heavy themes and beautiful descriptive writing. McKelvey's story is fantastic. It begs for an older audience to read it and grapple with it, and he dives between deep contemplations of the soul to intense action expertly weaving together. His story is honestly really deserving of its own book. It's so well done. The plot for each of the stories varies, and that keeps the whole collection very engaging. Some of the stories have more familiar standard plots, like The Prince of Yorsha Doon being a pretty typical fairy tale fantasy type story, while others are much more unique, like The Wooing of Sophelia Stupe. I never felt bored with any of these stories, even the ones I wasn't as big of a fan of, because they're all so different from one another. I was excited to see what the next story would bring. A large part of why I wanted to read this collection was to jump back into the world of Erwiar, since I am a huge Wingfeather Saga fan, and I wanted to jump back into Peterson's world. For the most part, these stories really deliver on that. The Prince of Yorsha Doon gives readers a glimpse at one of the locations that's just barely mentioned on the side of the main series. It, along with Shadowblade and the Florid Sword, gets to dive into how Erwiar has changed since the events of the main saga. Neither addresses the ending of the series, which if you've read that, you know what I'm talking about, but it does allow some of the side characters to have their own adventures and spotlight. There are also some of the stories which like to give histories of some of the main characters from this main series, namely Podo. Willow Worlds tries to tell a story of Podo's youth, but it just comes across as odd and really out of place. It almost tries to set up Erwiar as part of a Narnia-esque world, where there are portals to other places. It even name drops New Orleans, which for me doesn't really work with the world building of Erwiar, and made this story just feel strange, and Podo felt very forced as the protagonist of this story, as he didn't really seem like Podo, and this has no connection to his main story, and I just questioned what was going on with this whole story. From the Deeps of the Dragon King does a much better job of exploring Podo's history, and it tells the story of how Podo, spoiler for the main series, maimed a particular sea dragon. It's really interesting to get a look at what Podo was like as a sea dragon hunter and a pirate, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. Like I mentioned in the writing quality section, though, it really struggles to blend the humor with the horror of this story from Podo's past. This is supposed to be a time that traumatizes Podo and that he's very guilty of, and it's just supposed to be a terrible event, but it comes across as more comical because of how it is told. There are also a few moments that don't quite match up with the established lore of the Wingfeather saga, such as fangs being referenced when they should not be referenced at this time period, but overall, this story is a great contribution to Erwiar. The Wooing of Sophelia Stupe and the Ballad of Lanric and Rube are both stories set in the distant past and explore figures who are only briefly mentioned either in footnotes or lightly referenced in the narration. Both those stories do a great job of building out the world and giving it depth, and have lots of fun references to the main series that I appreciate and I'm sure other fans will appreciate. Without going into spoilers, The Places Beyond the Maps tells the story of one of the Wingfeather Saga's mysteries. It's a story where you see the true horrors that can lurk in Erwiar, and it's like stripping away any childish lenses that you might have protecting the reader. Abominables are actually man-eaters, fangs are actually monsters, and man is deeply flawed. The story manages to make Erwiar feel bigger, more dangerous, and more wonderful for it. I will make a note that I'm going to talk about the content for The Places Beyond the Maps after talking about the content for the rest of this collection, because that has way more content than all the other stories in this collection. For the rest of those stories, there is a bit of bathroom humor, but nothing extreme or frequent at all. Again, like the main series, there is very minimal romance, in fact, probably a bit less in this. Even stories like The Wooing of Sophelia Stupe use romance as more of a comedic thing, and there's nothing sexual in this collection. There is a bit of violence throughout the stories, but it's not severe. The only exception is from the Deeps of the Dragon King, which does have some more intense moments of violence, such as dragons being maimed or someone losing a leg, but it is not overly descriptive at all. I don't think it even talks about blood hardly at all. There's some light magic to contend with, such as portals to other worlds, but nothing even as intense as the main series, which is already pretty light on magic for a fantasy. Now we're getting into The Places Beyond the Maps. Like I mentioned previously, this story is begging for older readers to pick it up and grapple with it. It has very heavy themes such as losing a child, the guilt that comes with that, a marriage dissolving, anger at God, and preferring death over suffering. The story essentially tracks a man being beaten down and follows if he can move on after all that suffering. It's not entirely depressing throughout, and I won't spoil how it ends, but wading through these heavy moments is essential to the core of this story. One of the mature elements that is in this story that I kind of hinted at before is the man reaches the point where he becomes suicidal. He even attempts to starve himself to death and will throw himself into dangerous situations hoping he will be killed. It is portrayed negatively in the story, but it can be hard to read. This story is also way more violent than the other stories in this collection or the main series, as characters will be killed and references are made to whole villages being slaughtered. Injuries are described in much more bloody, grisly detail than they are elsewhere. There's also more spirituality in this story, as one of the heavy themes is whether or not God, or in this story, the Maker, is just. The man contemplates his hatred for the Maker, his hatred for himself, and the general spiritual nature of man. There are also lots of disturbing moments in this story, as the man vomits after being hit in the gut, people are treated cruelly and abused, and innocent people and animals are killed. The Fangs come across more as orcs, being very vicious, brutal creatures in this, and their disturbing origin, for those who have read the main series, is explored in some disturbing detail. I also can't remember if there were any scenes where the man turns to drinking in his grief, but there might have been, so I will mention that. Wingfeather Tales is a largely satisfying return to the world of Ere We Are. Having multiple writers contribute to the book makes it feel new and unique. The illustrations throughout are wonderful, and this book is largely suitable for young and old alike. I'll also mention that I actually listened to the audiobook for this, and Andrew Peterson is the one who reads it, and I think he does a great job. While a few of the stories, such as Willow Worlds, failed to work as Wingfeather stories, most contribute to the world very well. The Wooing of Sophelia, Stupe, and The Places Beyond the Maps alone are well worth reading this collection. Anyone who is a fan of the Wingfeather saga, or wanting a collection of shorter, often witty fantasy stories, should definitely give Wingfeather Tales a chance. I hope you enjoyed this review and that it's helpful. Thanks for watching. Bye!